How's everyone doing?
Yeah.
I'd love to exchange more pleasantries, but the clock is ticking, so I'm going to be talking about 3 lessons that I learned from a cinematic masterpiece called The Gladiator, which released 24 years ago when I was 1 year old. Just a quick point. A few weeks ago, I gave this talk in Amsterdam and I shamelessly went over the time limit. So I want to try and do a little bit better this time. So we have just over 4 minutes. So let's try and use them to the maximus. I'm being spontaneous. This is usually not a good sign. I'm very sorry, Lavinia. So the first lesson from the movie Gladiator, the thing that's interesting is that Maximus needed to learn how to be a gladiator, right? So he was obviously a highly decorated military general, but he'd never been a gladiator before. Now, granted, he had some transferable skills, so he wasn't an entry-level gladiator. But let's be honest, if they released the lions as soon as he entered the arena, it would have been a very short film. So what we see in the movie is the stakes gradually get higher as the story progresses, which is great from a cinematic perspective because it draws you into the drama, but it also makes sense from a learning perspective. Now, just over a year ago, my son turned 6 and we threw him a little party. Everything was going well. At one point in the evening, he came over to me with a very sad look on his face. And I asked, what's the matter? He took me to a little pile of presents in the corner. He picked up one present from that pile and he pointed to the corner where it said, suitable for ages 4+. And so I looked at him and I said, yes, it says 4+, you're 6. I don't really see the problem here. At which point he looked me straight in the eye and he said, it's for babies. So my little son, who had just turned 6 that day, seemed to have an intuitive sense that if something was possible to be done by a 4-year-old, it was going to be too easy for him. The point I'm making is that the right level of challenge is a key to mastery. Right? The second lesson from Gladiator is, so as we've already seen, he was a military general. He was used to giving and receiving orders, right? Command and control, or as we like to call it in L&D, compliance. Right? But the story changes when Maximus realizes he has a level of autonomy. So suddenly, he's emotionally, the mission becomes his own, and he's emotionally invested in the outcome, right? And so things aren't just happening to him, but he's making things happen. In other words, he becomes the hero of his own story. Now, as our lives become increasingly digital and automized, it's easy to forget sometimes that we are not controlled by the random outcomes of a complex system. As human beings, we crave autonomy, and we can do incredible things when we have it. So that's a question I think worth asking ourselves. How do we give our learners a level of autonomy? I'm almost done, but not yet. There's one final thing about Gladiator, which I think is the driving force behind his desire for mastery and his desire for autonomy, and that thing is purpose. So Indra Nooyi was the former CEO of PepsiCo, and she said, if you don't focus on performance and purpose, you cannot deliver performance. Right? So this is, at one point in the film, Maximus is asked, why are you doing this? And his answer was 10 words. He said, because it was the last wish of a dying man. That was his purpose, and he was willing to go to the greatest lengths to realize it. So what we see in Gladiator is ultimately a story of transformation. Right? So it's the general who became a slave, the slave who became a gladiator, the gladiator who defied an emperor, right? But it wasn't a straight line. It was lots of ups and downs along the way, and he gets there with the help of community. He gets there with the right interventions at the right time, and he gets there with mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So that, I think, is a good question to ask ourselves, right? How do we create these epic, transformative journeys for our people? Because if I had to guess, I think we all entered this profession to be part of these kinds of stories of transformation. So I think my time, one last thing, 1 minute, sorry. There was a dream, that was L&D. We believed it once. It's time to believe it again. Speaking of time, my time is up. Please fill out the feedback form. It consists of only one question. Thank you.